As you think about the hopes and aspirations and the kinds of things that you've expressed with one another, are there some things that you perceive might be getting in the way of realizing those hopes and aspirations?
Both in and outside of the church, that becoming more polarized and separated. So, we're more prone to speak and have conversations with people that think exactly like us. And if you're on, Facebook and there's somebody like posting things that you disagree with, you just X them out and block it. So all of a sudden you just get this like stream of, yeah, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this. And I think that's actually like making, it's making people be more extreme and less open to considering other ways of thinking or considering the validity of other opinions, or definitely like hurting our ability to have conversations with people that have different opinions.
I spend most of my time working in a retirement community, and it's been very formative for me to have to slow down and spend more time just having simple small talk conversations, and have been able to accomplish much more because of those conversations than Bible studies or sermons. And I think the pace of life in this area especially, but in our nation as a whole, we don't have time for just shooting the breeze. And if you can stop talk to the person who's sitting next to you on the metro, or talk to the person sitting next to you in the pew on Sunday morning, that can completely reshape the way we operate as a church.
I think along sort of the same lines Adam was talking about, I'm really concerned by how much, I see politics creeping into the work of the church and just sort of hindering what we're able to do together because we perceive these distinct lines to exist, and nobody is willing to cross those lines, and it's really upsetting. And I'm from South Georgia, and the South Georgia Conference has a tendency to be very conservative in a lot of things, and so voices that present different opinions sometimes aren't heard the same way. And so I don't know. I think that there's a need to open up that conversation between two sides, which is just sad that you even call it two sides. So I just bemoan, I guess, that in our church, when we've almost come to a point where they're two really, distinct cultures within the church. It's just sad. I would like to see us come back into one community.
I think there's several elements to why there's been kind of decline in the church, and but I think one of the main reasons is the connections we have with other people, coming from a church that is declining in attendance due to the fact that there's basically one main generation there, and that's of the older generation, and it's hard to connect to the younger generation to pull them in to kind of boost not only the attendance but the productivity of the church. Is come to kind of standstill in the present time. And it's not only in our church, so to speak, but in churches worldwide, in the U.S. and all over. But it's the connections that we make with other people, trying to outreach to other communities around the area, to bring them in so we could kind of, I guess, not only maintain, I guess, our, I guess, contain our, just maintain our faithfulness to the community, if I could say that.
I think that you can't really underestimate how fearful people are of a lot of things. And some of it is, if you think about culture and politics, things like that, people really are afraid that democracy is going to come to an end, and that capitalism is at risk. And I think that there are a lot of people that believe that the existence of Christianity in the world is at risk. And so, when you talk about being tolerant and appreciating diversity, if you are faithful and that's what you want to do, then that's fine. But if other people don't want to do that, then is that okay? Are we willing to risk Christianity's existence in order to tolerate other people who aren't of the Christian faith? Are you offering a guide, an ethical guide for the world, and then when some people reject it, is that okay with you or not? Because I think when you get to the point where you're expecting other people to do something or imposing it on other people, then that's when it becomes really confrontational. And I do think that the bottom line is that people are afraid of what might happen, of violence and intolerance. And I think that some of those things are what get in the way of people's hopes.
I very much resonate with this idea that fear gets in the way. We stop listening to each other when our anxieties rise, and we stop breathing while someone else is talking. I just think that fear, anxiety, and being quick to figure out what is it that I'm going to say to change this person's mind is getting in the way of speaking with each other. And I think that's hard, though. I do think that it's a very hard thing to do, to have a conversation and not want to change someone else's mind. Because I really think what I think is true, of course I want someone else to agree with me. But also when that kind of attitude towards talking is taking place, I'm also limiting my own growth too.
I guess two things that I want to think about in terms of challenges that get in the way. I think one, and it might be just the way politics is in this country or the way that we're raised to have right or wrong answers, but I think there's definitely an either-or type of complex in society that we can't consider both and, or that there's just we all have different perspectives and views and lenses, and so keeping in mind that our view of reality isn't truth, but just our view of reality. And so I think that can get in the way. And I think it's for a lot of the reasons I've already mentioned, fear, and then also, just a need to be right, I guess. And then the other thing I was thinking about is community. I think in the past, communities were closer together. You know everybody. I come from a small town too, so where you know everybody and you engage with everyone, and you're kind of forced to live together. And then when we talk about a context of living in a city, just community is very different. You're scattered across in an urban area, and forming communities can be challenging, not always neighborhood-based, and church is kind of one way a community can be formed, but maybe we've forgotten kind of how to be a community with each other to some degree, and forgotten that community does mean disagreements. It can mean having that, this is a terrible analogy for no one, with the crazy uncle kind of aspect. I mean, there's different members of the family that bring different things, and that we kind of just learn to live together and love together. And so maybe that part of that aspect has been lost.
The folks have already mentioned the toxic political environment, and then here we are modeling principles of holy conferencing. And I've been at annual conferences that have modeled holy conferencing, and I've been at annual conferences that look a lot more like the toxic political conversation. And so that's, in one sense, that's a blessing of United Methodism, that we are a denomination of such size that we represent all political beliefs and contextual backgrounds. We're very diverse, but we often slip into mirroring our secular counterparts rather than modeling a different way. And I think that toxicity really does get in the way, particularly when considering reaching out to people who are not currently a part of a faith community. It's hard for me to sell United Methodism when I see United Methodists behaving in a certain way. How can I authentically invite people into their local church when they may not find a local church that's all that welcoming to them? It's a risky thing for me to invite someone, oh, you should go check out your United Methodist local congregation. I could be asking them to take a risk to potentially go into a place that's not going to be very welcoming. And that's very difficult for me. It's a real challenge. It's something that gets in the way.